How did you meet Bob Lazenby? And tell me about your experience working with him.
Bob actually was a patient of mine, and probably 3 years ago, he was sitting in my exam chair, and we were just chatting business, and I happened to ask him about the process of building a building and what all was involved, because we had kind of outgrown our space, and I was looking at options. And Bob went home and plugged in all the information that I had given him, and the next day sent me a long list of all the properties that were available within a 5-mile radius of my current office at that time, and we kind of went from there.
So what made you decide to own versus continuing to lease your office?
So in the very beginning, Bob sat down with me and we went through kind of all the different options as far as buying versus renting versus getting shell space and finishing it out. And he gave me a presentation as far as for each one, how much it would cost, what kind of investment I would be looking for up front, because it was all new territory for me. And to be able to make the best decision. And so we talked about the pros and cons of each one, of leasing versus of buying space, leasing new space, finishing it out, renovating my old space, adding on to it, versus just starting from scratch and building a building.
So was Bob helpful in bringing financing resources to you, and was he helpful in working with you all the way through to closing?
Absolutely. He was very helpful throughout the entire process. It was kind of a new ground for me. It's something that he does every day, so it was all old hat for him. But throughout the process, he introduced me to some developers. He knew I was interested in owning the building, but to have the cash up front to make that happen, I wasn't quite at a point to do that. So he introduced me to some developers that were in the process of building a shell, and so we got in on the ground floor. They knew that I was interested in buying the building, so it all kind of went from there. Throughout the process, Bob was involved. He came to meetings. He would email me on a regular basis to tell me what I needed to do, just to make sure that we were staying on track and staying on time, and that we didn't miss anything. He was very helpful in the financing end of it. He introduced me to probably half a dozen bankers. And every time he found one that had a good deal, he said, let's talk to somebody else and see if we can get you something better. So from that standpoint, he was very helpful in making sure I had the best deal possible.
Okay, your practice has had significant growth over the last few years. Looks like you've built plenty of expansion space into your new building.
So one of the things that we talked about was not just building for today, but building for the future. So we moved from an office that was 1,500 square feet, which got very cramped. By the time we finished there, I was sharing my office with the break room and with all of our contact lens inventory, and you'd have to kind of crawl over stuff to get to where my desk was and my computer. So we talked about the fact that we didn't want to be in that same spot, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So we really kind of designed the office for the future. So we've designed it so that down the road I can add another doctor, that we can add some more technicians, and really made it so that the flow would be good in the future and now. And it's nice because there's not lots of room.
And you've added a new eyeglass center for your patients?
One of the things we were interested in was adding some additional kind of revenue stream for the office, and it makes sense. I write a lot of prescriptions, and they were all going elsewhere. I was kind of resistant to the idea of selling glasses, but all of my patients on a regular basis would say, "Why don't you sell glasses?" So part of the space that we finished out was to finish out an optical shop and start that. So we've got an optician now that works for us and is very, very experienced and makes very high quality glasses.
That's great. But tell me about how your patients feel overall.
My patients love it. They can park out front and walk in the door. Where I was before was at a big medical center, which was good when you're starting out because it gives you sort of a built-in referral network of all the other doctors. But the patients don't really like it, and the patients don't know you're there. And so unless you knew I was in that building, there was no signage out front that would say, "Hey, there's an eye doctor in this." So it's one of those things that if you didn't know I was there, you would not know I was there. Whereas here, people can park right out front. They can walk straight in the door. They don't have to wait for an elevator. And the big advantage is I got a huge sign out front, and people drive by and say, "Hey, look, there's an eye doctor." And I've been shocked that on a daily basis, we have people that just pop in because they're driving by and they say they need an eye exam, and they come in and schedule an appointment, or they come in and say, hey, we're interested in getting some new glasses. So I think just the location alone is going to be quite a bit of growth for the practice, and certainly increase our visibility.
Okay, so lastly, do you feel comfortable recommending that other doctors and dentists and others in the medical community to work with Bob?
Bob is a guy that I absolutely trust. He's had my best interests in this the entire time. You know, you deal with a lot of developers, and there's a lot of guys around that build medical space, because let's face it, most doctors are kind of idiots when it comes to business. So there's a lot of developers out there that build a shell, they'll finish out the inside, and it's going to be this great space, and it's going to be awesome. And they'll sell you this building, but then you get to the end of it, and the construction's not very good. I remember when I first started out looking at some shell space that was an empty shell, and the foundation was already cracked in 5 places. And that's kind of the problem with most development, is most builders build a building not just to build it and then sell it and move on. They don't build it for the long haul. Whereas Bob's made sure everybody we've dealt with has been in it for the long haul, that this is a building that's going to be here for years, and it's going to be a good investment in the future.